The primary thing that we're going to, these are the whiteboard markers. The primary thing that we're going to work on today, and that what I'm going to be doing, is I'm going to be going around sort of looking and poking at your code. I'm going to be asking you questions about how you're doing it. I'm going to be pointing out things that you could probably be doing better. Things that maybe, you know, that's maybe a little confusing. Usually what I find is that people don't think that it's confusing, but with a little bit of fooling around, it gets a lot better. And today is that day. You know how when you're coding, a lot of times you're like, man, I should extract that method, but I don't want to go too far. I don't want to end up with, you know, class explosion or a method explosion. I don't know if you have these terms up here where you have too many classes or too many methods. Today is the day to do that, because I've been doing this a long time and I've worked with a lot of people, and I don't think I have ever seen anybody actually make too many classes. Usually you have too few classes. And I've been doing Code Retreat a long time, and probably I'll be surprised if you guys are the ones that do too many classes, too many methods. In general, we do too few. And what we're going to, the format of the day is that we're going to pair up. We're going to spend 45-minute sessions working on this. A signal. Let me put on that. So we'll spend 45 minutes working on Conway's Game of Life. I'll explain the rules, and we have the printout. It's a very simple problem to understand, and it's a very rich thing. I know people who have done 4, 5, 6 code retreats, and they still get a lot of practice out of this. And at the end of every 45 minutes, I'll say hands off keyboards, and we delete all of our code. Everything we did over the last 45 minutes, we just throw away. No putting it into your source repository. No copying it to another folder. No putting it up onto a gist somewhere. I will guarantee you, I've seen a lot of people's attempts. I will be surprised if you really want to keep the code. Because realistically, the code is not what we're here to produce today. It's the act of practicing the code.
Remember the guy we had to fight in Toronto?
Yes. One guy we had to, he refused. And he goes, no. Yes. He goes, no. He says, you're asking me to delete my code is saying you're making a judgment about my code. Now, I'll admit I saw the code, and I was making a judgment about the code. But no, that's the whole game. The day-to-day. The beauty of deleting your code. There's a bunch of sort of side effects. But the beauty is that you can practice today. You can do things that you wouldn't do. You should do things today that you wouldn't do at work. Because no matter what happens, on average, in 22.5 minutes, it goes away. So if you write something that is awful, horrible, awesome. Because it's going to be deleted and it's going to go away. No one's going to see it. And you'll have learned that I shouldn't have done that. So next time you won't do that. And then we swap pairs. And we start again. We'll do about 3 sessions this morning. We'll take a long lunch. Lunch is usually about an hour and a half. And then that'll give us chance to sort of recharge, meet everybody, talk, share ideas, and then we'll do probably 3 sessions in the afternoon, depending on how time works out. And then, I don't know what the evening has in store. So, that's the sort of how the day works. I'm going to be coming around sort of looking over your shoulder, asking questions. Between the sessions, so between the 45-minute sessions, we'll do a very quick, sort of everybody will stand up, and then we will have a small discussion, very quick, and then probably about an 8 or 9 minute break to find other pairs, things like that. Before we get to this though, there's 2 things that I want to do. One is talk about what I'm going to be focusing on when I'm coming around. Over the past few years, and especially since I've been doing code retreats, I've realized that the most important thing that we lack as software developers is an understanding of really the very basic rules of design. We know design patterns, and we know the solid principles, and we know our frameworks, but we don't have a really great handle on fundamental design and software design. So, what I'm going to be hitting hard today are what are called the 4 rules of simple design. These were, I believe, codified by Kent Beck. And they basically say, there's 4 of them, and if you have these, if you follow these, you will have a simple design. The first one, can you see red, or should I use black? Red is good. Red's good, okay. The first one is passes tests. If you don't have tests, you can't prove to me that your code works. In a short enough time that I'm not going to get bored. If you can run your tests in a matter of a minute or a second, I'm not going to get bored. 2, no duplication. You don't want any duplication in your code. This is an important one because it's very subtle. Because as you get better and better and better and better, as we do that, we start to understand the different levels of duplication. And we start out with duplication of constants. Then we realize that it's not really about that. It's about duplication of code. And then we realize it's not about that. It's about duplication of algorithms. And then we realize it's not about that. It's about duplication of intent. And then we realize it's not about that, and we get to this the real understanding, which is that it's about knowledge. And it's about concepts. And so you've all heard, I'm sure, the DRY principle of don't repeat yourself. I don't know if it has a different acronym here. But what it says is that every piece of knowledge in your system should have one and only one representation. So every piece of knowledge should be in one place and have one representation, and everybody else just uses that. And so we'll be working on this today. Third is reveals intent, or good names. There's a saying that the measure of code quality is the number of what the fucks per minute. When you go look at the code, if you sit there and go, what? Why does I have a method called open door and it's saving something to the database? We've all had that method. We've all gone look at that code. Normally it's code that I wrote. And then I go back a week later and go, what? Man, can't believe that. Okay. And then of course there's all the code that everyone else writes. So this is what, we want to really have good names. And fourth is small. We make it as small as possible. And these are in order of sort of how we work through. Now, of course, as JB likes to say, passes tests. Passes tests. Of course your code passes the tests. Of course you all write automated tests. Any modern developer writes tests. And if you do the other things, your code's going to be very small. So we like to really just focus heavily on these two. And that's what we're going to focus on. Here we go. He has a nice description of it. Look, crossed it out even. So the idea is that iterating over these reveals intent, duplication. As you eliminate duplication, that reveals structures in your code. You make better names, that reveals more duplication. It reveals things that don't belong there, so you move them. These are the kinds of things that we're going to be hitting hard today. Today is the day that when you look at something and you go, I could extract that method, but I don't want to go too far. Today's the day you go too far. Today's the goal is to write perfect code. Can you write perfect code? Today's the day that you're going to try. And so I'm going to come around and ask questions, and this is kind of, you know, this might be a bad name, this might be some duplication, things like that. Cool. I'm running a little bit